I was back at work by mid-October. The building looked the same. My desk was where I'd left it, third row from the windows, facing the wall with the fire safety poster that had been up since 2019. My computer monitor still had the same smudge in the upper right corner. I wiped it off with my sleeve on the first day back, and it reappeared within a week. My manager asked how I was doing during our check-in. I said I was fine. She said to let her know if I needed anything. I said I would. We talked about the quarterly reports for 8 minutes after that. The work itself hadn't changed. I still processed vendor contracts, tracked compliance deadlines, filed amendment requests when terms shifted. The spreadsheet formulas I'd built in June still worked in October. I updated them when necessary. I answered emails. I attended meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I took lunch at my desk most days, usually a sandwich or leftovers from dinner. My apartment was the same apartment. 4th floor, corner unit, decent light in the morning. The landlord had fixed the bathroom faucet while I was gone. It didn't drip anymore. I noticed that the first week back. I ran the dishwasher on Sundays. I took out the trash on Wednesday evenings. The neighbor's dog still barked at 6 a.m. I went to the grocery store on Saturday mornings. I bought the same brands I'd always bought. The store had rearranged the cereal aisle, but everything else was in the right place. I used the self-checkout. I brought reusable bags. I walked home with 2 bags in each hand, the handles cutting into my palms the same way they always had. My brother called every Sunday. He asked how I was doing. I said I was fine. He told me about his kids, about work, about the deck he was building in the backyard. I asked questions about the deck. He said it was coming along. He said I should visit when it was done. I said that sounded good. I still ran 3 mornings a week. I did the same route I'd done before, down Maple to the park, around the lake path, back up through the residential streets. My pace was slower for the first few weeks. By November, it had evened out. I saw the same people. The woman with the 2 golden retrievers, the old man who walked backwards for some reason, the teenager who ran sprints on the hill. None of them knew me. I didn't know them. My doctor said everything looked normal at my follow-up in November. Blood pressure, heart rate, lung function, all within range. She asked if I was sleeping. I said yes. She asked if I had any pain. I said no. She asked if I had any questions. I didn't. She said to schedule another appointment in 6 months. I scheduled it on my way out. I paid my bills on time. I renewed my car registration. I filed my taxes early. I returned library books before they were due. I confirmed appointments. I RSVP'd to invitations. I showed up when I said I would show up. My friend Amy invited me to dinner in late November. She made pasta. Her husband talked about a documentary he'd watched. I asked questions about the documentary. Amy asked if I wanted more wine. I said sure. We talked about a hiking trip they were planning for spring. They asked if I wanted to come. I said maybe. I'd have to check my schedule. Amy said no pressure. Her husband brought out dessert. I stayed until 9:30, then drove home. I went to the dentist. No cavities. I got an oil change. I replaced the air filter in my furnace. I bought new running shoes when the old ones wore out. I voted in the local election. I shoveled my landlord's driveway when it snowed because he was 76 and I was on the 1st floor lease. People didn't ask much. Coworkers said, "Good to see you," when I came back. And that was it. The guy at the coffee shop remembered my order. The woman at the dry cleaners handed me my shirts without checking the ticket. Everything resumed. That was the right word for it, resumed. I watched television in the evenings. I followed 2 shows. I didn't really care what happened in either of them, but I watched them. I read before bed, usually for 20 or 30 minutes. I finished books. I started new ones. I kept a bookmark. My body worked. I walked without limping. I lifted things. I climbed stairs. I drove. I typed. I carried groceries. I stood in line. I reached items on high shelves. My hands were steady. My vision was clear. I didn't get winded. I didn't get dizzy. I didn't have headaches. I went to a birthday party in December. It was for someone from work, someone I didn't know well. I brought a card. I ate cake. I talked to 3 different people about weather and traffic and holiday plans. I left after an hour. No one seemed to notice. I called my parents every other week. They asked how I was. I said I was good. My mother told me about the neighbors. My father told me about a project in the garage. I told them about work. They said they were proud of me. I said thank you. We talked for 15 or 20 minutes, then said goodbye. I exchanged texts with friends. Short ones mostly. Confirmations, updates, occasional jokes. I responded within a few hours. I used punctuation. I didn't leave people on red. My car started every morning. My heat worked. My Wi-Fi was stable. My phone battery lasted the day. My alarm went off when it was supposed to. I woke up when it went off. The weeks stacked up like plates in a cabinet, one on top of the other, each one nearly identical to the last. October, November, December. Work, home, errands, sleep. I moved through them. I completed them. They kept coming. By January, I'd been back for 3 months. Everything was functional. Everything was handled. I had routines. I had schedules. I had no complications. I was alive. My heart beat. My lungs expanded. My brain sent signals to my limbs and my limbs obeyed. I woke up every day. I performed tasks. I maintained my environment. I met my obligations. That was all true. That was all real. That wasn't the problem. My mother said it at Christmas dinner. We're just so grateful you're here. She said it while passing the green beans. My father nodded. My brother raised his glass. Everyone smiled at me across the table. I smiled back. I said, "Thank you." I took the green beans. My nephew asked if I wanted to see his new video game after dinner. I said, "Sure." We sat on the couch and he showed me how to build structures and collect resources. He asked if I wanted a turn. I played for 10 minutes. He said I was pretty good. I handed the controller back. Before I left, my mother hugged me at the door. She held on longer than usual. She said, "We love you," into my shoulder. I said I loved her too. She pulled back and looked at me with wet eyes. She said, "You know that, right?" I said yes. She hugged me again. The drive home took 40 minutes. I listened to the radio. A station was playing listener requests. Someone had requested a song for their daughter who was home from the hospital. The DJ said something about miracles and second chances. I changed the station. My manager scheduled a one-on-one in early January. She closed the door to the conference room. She asked how I was adjusting. I said it was going fine. She said the team was really happy to have me back. I said that was good to hear. She said if I ever needed to talk, her door was always open. I said I appreciated that. She asked about my workload. I said it was manageable. We talked about Q1 goals for the rest of the meeting. Amy texted in mid-January. She asked if I wanted to get coffee. We met at the place near her apartment on Saturday. She ordered a latte. I ordered black coffee. We sat by the window. She asked how things were going. I said they were fine. She said she was glad. She stirred her latte. She said, "I was really worried, you know." I said I knew. She said, "I'm just really glad you're okay." I said I was okay. She looked at me like she was waiting for something else. I drank my coffee. She talked about work for a while. She talked about a fight she'd had with her sister. She asked if I was dating anyone. I said no. She said that was okay, no rush. She said I should focus on myself. I asked what she meant. She said, you know, just taking care of yourself. Being kind to yourself. I said I was. She nodded. Before we left, she hugged me in the parking lot. She said, "I'm really proud of you." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just said thanks. A coworker stopped by my desk in late January. Her name was Janet. We'd worked together for 3 years but had never talked much beyond project updates. She put a book on my desk. She said her sister had recommended it. The cover had a sunrise on it. The title had the word journey in it. She said, I just thought, maybe you'd find it helpful. I picked it up and looked at the back. It was about resilience, about finding meaning, about gratitude practices. I said, thank you. She said, it really helped my sister when she went through her thing. I said, I'll take a look. She smiled. She said, you're doing amazing, by the way. I put the book in my desk drawer. I saw it every time I opened the drawer to get a pen. I never took it out. My brother called on a Tuesday. He said he'd been thinking about me. I asked if everything was okay. He said, yeah, everything was fine. He just wanted to check in. I said I was doing fine. He said, good. That's good. There was a pause. He said, you know you can talk to me, right? About anything. I said I knew. He said, I mean it. I said I knew. We talked about the weather after that. I went to the dentist in February. The hygienist made small talk while cleaning my teeth. She asked about my weekend. I said it was fine. She said she'd been binge-watching a show. She asked if I watched it. I said no. She said I should. It was really good, really uplifting. She said, I think everyone needs something uplifting these days, you know? I made a sound that could have been agreement. My friend Dan invited me to a basketball game. We'd gone to games before, years ago. We sat in the upper deck. We ate hot dogs. The home team was losing by 15 at halftime. Dan said, man, it's good to hang out like this again. I said, yeah. He said, you seem good. You seem like yourself. I said, thanks. He said, I mean it. I don't know. I think you handled everything really well. Better than I would have. I watched the cheerleaders on the court. I said, I don't know about that. He said, no, seriously, you're so strong, man. The teams came back out for the third quarter. I focused on the game. My doctor's office called in March. The receptionist said I'd missed my follow-up appointment. I looked at my calendar. I had it written down for the wrong day. She asked if I wanted to reschedule. I said yes. She said, the doctor just wants to make sure you're staying on top of everything. I said I understood. When I went in, the doctor asked the same questions as before. Sleep, pain, energy levels. I gave the same answers as before. She said everything looked good. She said, you're doing great. Monsieur, she said it like it was supposed to mean something specific. I said thanks. She asked if I had any concerns. I said no. She asked if I was feeling okay emotionally. I said I was fine. She looked at me for a few seconds. She said there were resources available if I ever wanted to talk to someone. I said I'd keep that in mind. She said, I mean it. There's no shame in it. I said I knew. Amy invited me to a dinner party in late March. There were 8 people. I knew 3 of them. The host made chicken. Someone brought wine. Everyone talked and laughed. I talked when people asked me questions. I laughed when things were funny. A woman I didn't know asked what I did for work. I told her. She asked how long I'd been doing it. I told her. She said, do you like it? I said it was fine. She said, just fine? I said, it pays the bills. She laughed like I'd made a joke. Later, I helped clear the table. Amy followed me into the kitchen. She said, you okay? I said, yeah. She said, you're quiet tonight. I said I was always quiet. She said, I know, but... She didn't finish. I rinsed a plate. She said, people are just happy to see you, you know. We all are. I said I knew. She touched my arm. She said, you have a lot to be thankful for. I said I knew that too. I drove home at 10. I thought about what she'd said, about being thankful, about people being happy, about having a lot. I did have a lot. I had a job. I had a home. I had my health. I had people who cared. I had a future. I had time. I had another day tomorrow and probably another one after that. I understood what people meant when they said these things. I understood the implications. I understood the subtext. I understood what my presence at Christmas dinner meant to my mother. I understood what Amy meant when she said she was proud. I understood what my doctor meant when she said I was doing great. I understood that I was supposed to feel a certain way about all of it. I understood that the fact of being alive was supposed to generate something in me. Relief, maybe, gratitude, joy, perspective, a renewed appreciation, a sense of fortune, a feeling of having dodged something, of having been given something, of having emerged with something valuable. I understood that this was the expected response. I just didn't feel it. The problem wasn't that I was afraid it would happen again. People asked about that sometimes, in indirect ways. They asked if I felt safe, if I was nervous, if certain things bothered me now. The answer was no. I wasn't waiting for something. I wasn't braced for impact. I didn't flinch at sounds or avoid places or feel my heart race when I shouldn't. That wasn't it. The problem wasn't my body either. Everything worked. I'd confirmed that multiple times now with multiple professionals. Heart, lungs, muscles, nerves, all functional. I could run 3 miles. I could lift boxes. I could stand for hours. I could sleep through the night. Physically, I was fine. Better than fine, according to the charts and numbers. I was healthy. I was capable. That wasn't it either. I sat at my desk on a Thursday in April and tried to articulate it to myself. Not to anyone else. Just to myself. An internal inventory. I was not traumatized. I was not depressed. I was not anxious. I was not in denial. I was not stuck in the past. I was not avoiding reality. I knew what had happened. I knew it was over. I knew I had survived. I accepted all of these facts without resistance. The work in front of me was a contract revision. 12 pages. I'd read 8 of them. I needed to check the liability clauses against our standard terms. I'd done this exact task probably 200 times. I knew how to do it. I was capable of doing it. I could do it right now. I looked at page 9. The words were clear. The meaning was accessible. My brain could process the information. My hands could type the notes. The task could be completed. I just couldn't locate the part of me that cared whether I did it or not. Not in a depressed way. I wasn't sad about the contract. I wasn't sad about anything. I just couldn't find the mechanism that made this matter. The thing that made me lean forward and focus and give a shit about liability clauses. It had been there before. I remembered it being there. It was the same mechanism that made me care about being on time, about doing good work, about keeping my apartment clean, about calling my mother back, about all of it. It wasn't there anymore. I finished the contract by 5:30. It took longer than it should have. Not because I did it badly, but because I had to manually move myself through each step. Read this paragraph. Understand it. Compare it to the template. Make a note. Move to the next paragraph. There was no flow, no momentum. Just deliberate, mechanical progression. I drove home. I made dinner. I ate it. I washed the dish. I sat on the couch. The television was off. I looked at the remote. I could turn it on. I could watch something. People did that. I did that. I had done that yesterday. I could do it again today. I picked up the remote. I put it back down. It wasn't that I didn't want to watch television. I didn't not want to watch television. I had no preference either way. The absence of preference was the problem. My phone buzzed. A text from my brother. A photo of his kids at the playground. They were smiling. They looked happy. I texted back. Cute. He sent a thumbs up. I looked at the photo again. 2 children on swings. Blue sky. Green grass. A moment of their life, captured and sent to me. I understood that it was meant to be shared, that he wanted me to see it, that it was supposed to make me feel something. Connected, maybe. Happy for them. Warm. I felt nothing about it, not negatively. I didn't resent the photo. I didn't wish them unhappiness. I just had no emotional response to it at all. It was information. Children. Swings. Received. I used to have responses to things. I remembered that. Not big responses necessarily. I'd never been particularly emotional. But there had been small things, preferences, anticipations, minor satisfactions, looking forward to the weekend, enjoying a good meal, feeling pleased when something went well at work, feeling annoyed when it didn't. Those small things added up to something. They created texture. They made the difference between existing and living. They were the reason you did one thing instead of another thing, the reason you chose. Now there was just equivalence. Everything was equally fine, equally acceptable, equally neutral. Get up or stay in bed, equivalent. Eat or skip the meal, equivalent. Go out or stay home, equivalent. Talk or stay silent, equivalent. I chose things, obviously, I had to. Life required choices, but the choosing felt arbitrary. I did things because they were next on the list, not because I wanted to do them. I showed up because I'd said I would show up, not because I cared about being there. In May, I went to a work event, a retirement party for someone in accounting. There was cake in the break room. People gave speeches. The retiree cried. Everyone clapped. My coworker Jessica stood next to me. She said, 30 years, can you imagine? I said, that's a long time. She said, I wonder if I'll make it that long. I said, maybe. She said, would you want to stay here that long? I thought about it. Not whether I wanted to, but whether I had an answer. I said, I don't know. She laughed. She said, fair enough. The retiree gave a speech about how the job had given her purpose, how the people had become family, how she'd miss coming in every day. People nodded. Someone wiped their eyes. I ate my cake. It tasted like cake. I left at 5. I went home. I sat on the couch. I thought about purpose. The retiree had found it in 30 years of contract processing and compliance tracking. Or she said she had. Maybe she really had. Maybe that was possible. Maybe some people could take this, the spreadsheets, the meetings, the same conversations, the same tasks, the same building, the same desk, and find meaning in it. I couldn't. But that wasn't new. I hadn't found meaning in it before either. I'd just tolerated it. I'd done it because it paid for the apartment and the groceries and the car, and that had been enough. The tolerating had been enough. Now it wasn't. Not because I wanted more. I didn't want more. I didn't want anything. That was the issue. The survival event, I could acknowledge it now, at least to myself, at least in this way, had not broken me. It had not damaged me. It had not traumatized me. It had not made me afraid or angry or sad. It had just made everything else seem impossible to justify. The idea of continuing, not just the idea of going to work, but the idea of caring about going to work, of having preferences about what to have for dinner, of looking forward to the weekend, of being excited about a hiking trip or a new show or a birthday party, of wanting things, of choosing things because I wanted them, not just because they were next. The idea of living as if any of it mattered. People did that. They got up every day and acted like their choices meant something, like their tasks had purpose, like their time was building toward something, like there was a point. I had done that too. Before. I couldn't do it anymore. Not because I'd decided not to. Not because I was making some philosophical statement about meaninglessness. But because the mechanism that allowed it, that made it possible to care, to want, to prefer, to feel like any of this was worth doing, had stopped working. I was alive. I could move through the world. I could complete tasks. I could maintain relationships. I could perform the actions. I just couldn't generate the feeling that made any of those actions worth performing. And everyone expected me to. Everyone expected me to be grateful for the opportunity to keep performing them. To see my continued existence as a gift. To live like someone who'd been given a second chance. But continuing required something I didn't have anymore. It required believing that what came next mattered more than what had already happened. Summer came. The days got longer. The temperature rose. I bought a box fan at the hardware store and put it in my bedroom window. It ran all night. The noise was steady. I went to work. I processed contracts. I answered emails. I attended meetings. My manager said I was doing well. She said my output was consistent. She gave me a cost of living raise in June. I said thank you. She said I'd earned it. I hadn't earned it. I just kept showing up and doing the minimum required. But that was what earning it meant, apparently. Showing up. Continuing. My brother invited me to a cookout on the 4th of July. I drove to his house. There were other families there. Kids ran through a sprinkler in the yard. Adults stood around the grill drinking beer from plastic cups. Someone handed me a cup. I drank it. My nephew showed me a sparkler. He asked if I wanted to light one later. I said sure. When it got dark, we stood in the driveway. He held his sparkler up and waved it in circles. The light traced patterns in the air. He said, "Look." I looked. The light faded. He asked for another one. I lit it for him. My brother walked over. He put his hand on my shoulder. He didn't say anything. We stood there watching the kids wave sparklers. After a minute, he squeezed my shoulder once and walked back to the grill. I left at 9:30. I drove home with the windows down. Fireworks went off somewhere to the east. I could see the colors above the trees, but couldn't hear the sounds over the highway noise. Amy called in late July. She said she and her husband were going hiking in August. She said I should come. I said I'd think about it. She said no pressure, but it would be fun. "We miss you." I said I'd check my schedule. She said, "Okay, let me know." I didn't check my schedule. I knew I was free. I was always free. I just didn't know if I could spend 3 days pretending to enjoy hiking, pretending to care about the views, pretending the effort of climbing was worth the arrival at the top. I texted her a week later. I said something had come up. She said no worries, maybe next time. Work continued. The projects were the same. New contracts, same language. New vendors, same terms. I'd learned the patterns years ago. Now I just repeated them. The repetition required no thought. That made it easier. In August, the air conditioning broke in the office. It took them 3 days to fix it. People complained. They talked about how hot it was, how they couldn't focus, how it was unbearable. I noticed the heat. I didn't mind it. I didn't not mind it. It was just a condition. Janet stopped by my desk again. She asked if I'd read the book. I said I'd been busy. She said she understood. She said, whenever you get to it. She said, or don't, whatever helps. I said thanks. The book was still in my drawer. I saw it every day. I never opened it. My lease came up for renewal in September. The landlord raised the rent by $60. I could afford it. I could also afford to move. I thought about moving. I thought about looking at other apartments. Maybe something closer to work. Maybe something with better light. I signed the renewal without looking anywhere else, not because I liked the apartment, not because $60 mattered, but because moving required caring about where I lived, required having a preference, required believing that one place would be better than another. I didn't believe that. My mother called on my birthday. She asked what I was doing to celebrate. I said probably nothing. She said I should do something nice for myself. I said maybe. She asked if I wanted to come visit. I said I had to work. She said, maybe next weekend? I said maybe. I didn't go. I ordered takeout that night. The same thing I always ordered. I ate it at my kitchen table. I threw the containers away. I went to bed at 10. In October, a new person started in my department. Her name was Rachel. She was young, maybe 24. She asked a lot of questions. I answered them. She said I was really helpful. She said she was nervous about learning everything. I said she'd figure it out. She said, "Did it take you long to learn?" I said I didn't remember. She brought cookies one day, homemade. She left them in the break room with a note that said, "Thanks for being so welcoming." People took them. I took one. It was good. I couldn't tell you what kind it was. The weather turned cold. I got my winter coat out of the closet. It still fit. I wore it to work. I wore it to the grocery store. I wore it on runs. I still ran 3 days a week. The same route. My pace had stabilized. I wasn't trying to get faster. I wasn't trying to get slower. I just ran. My body moved. My heart beat faster. My breath came harder. Then I stopped, and it all went back to normal. In November, my doctor called. The receptionist said it was time for my 6-month follow-up. I scheduled it. I went in. The doctor asked the same questions. I gave the same answers. She said I looked good. She said my numbers were good. She asked if I had any concerns. I said no. She paused. She said, "And you're feeling okay? Overall?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Sleeping okay? Energy levels okay?" I said, "Yes." She looked at her computer. She looked back at me. She said, "Good. That's good." I left with another appointment card. 6 months from now. My brother called in early December. He said they were planning Christmas again. He said I should come. I said I would. He said, "Good. Mom will be happy." I said I knew. I went to Christmas. It was the same as last year. Same house. Same food. Same people. My mother hugged me at the door. She said she was glad I came. I said, of course. My nephew showed me his new video game. We played it. My father talked about the garage. I listened. My mother said grace before dinner. She thanked God for family, for health, for another year together, for blessings. Everyone said amen. I said amen. We ate. The food was fine. People talked. I responded when spoken to. I asked appropriate questions. I laughed at jokes. I helped clear the table. Before I left, my mother walked me to my car. She said, "You seem quiet." I said, "I'm always quiet." She said, "I know, but..." She looked at me. She said, "Are you happy?" I thought about the question, about what happy meant, about what the answer was. I said, "I'm fine." She nodded slowly. She said, "Okay." She didn't sound convinced. She hugged me. She said, "I love you." I said, "I love you too." I drove home. The roads were empty. It was late. The streetlights passed overhead in regular intervals. The road stretched out the same in front of me as it had behind me. I got home at midnight. I parked. I went inside. I hung up my coat. I brushed my teeth. I got into bed. I was alive. That was still true. That would be true tomorrow. And the day after that. And the day after that. The days would keep coming. I would keep moving through them. I would keep doing the things that needed to be done. I would keep showing up. Keep functioning. Keep existing. Not because I wanted to. Not because I found meaning in it. Not because I believed it mattered. But because stopping wasn't an option anyone would accept. Because continuing was what alive people did. Because the alternative was to explain something I couldn't explain to people who expected an explanation I didn't have. So I would continue. I would get up tomorrow. I would go to work. I would process contracts. I would buy groceries. I would answer my phone. I would show up for Christmas. I would renew my lease. I would schedule appointments. I would run my route. I would maintain my life. I would do all of it without the thing that made people think it was worth doing. I would exist in the gap between being alive and having a reason to be. And no one would know, because I would keep performing it correctly, because the performance was enough, because no one checked what was underneath. I closed my eyes. The fan hummed in the window. Tomorrow was already waiting.